In the winter of 1970, in Princeton, New Jersey, Saul Kripke delivered the most famous philosophy lectures in at least 200 years. First, he demolished the previously dominant theory of proper names. Take a look at my previous video on that if you haven't seen it already. In the video you're watching now, I cover Kripke's own theory of how proper names, like Abraham Lincoln or Mount Everest, get their meaning.
The basic idea is this. There's an initial dubbing or naming ceremony or baptism or whatever you want to call it. An initial ceremony where someone says, this thing, we're going to call this Mount Everest. Or, this thingy here, this little child, we're going to call it Abraham Lincoln. After that initial dubbing ceremony, other people use the name. They use the name Abraham Lincoln, and their use of the name is caused by, through some chain of causation, a certain kind of causation that we'd have to specify exactly for this theory to really work. Their use of the name Abraham Lincoln is ultimately caused by that initial dubbing ceremony. Like, they wouldn't be using the name Lincoln unless all the way back there, someone had introduced that name and said that's going to be the name of this baby. Someone, let's say a baby, is born. His parents call him by a certain name. They talk about him to their friends. Through various sorts of talk, the name is spread from link to link, as if by a chain. A speaker who is on the far end of this chain, who has heard about, say, Richard Feynman. Feynman is dead now, I think, but he was a big shot. He won the Nobel Prize in physics or whatever. He was a famous big deal physicist. And he had this proper name. The name was Richard Feynman, and people could use that name to talk about him, to refer to him. A speaker who is on the far end of this chain, who has heard about, say, Richard Feynman, may be referring to Richard Feynman, even though he can't remember from whom he first heard of Feynman. He knows that Feynman is a famous physicist. A certain passage of communication, reaching ultimately to the man himself, does reach the speaker. He then is referring to Feynman, even though he can't identify him uniquely. The idea here is that you can use a name and sort of defer to this causal chain leading back to this initial baptism or dubbing or naming ceremony. And you can do that without having, like, in your head a whole bunch of descriptions that uniquely identify this person or whatever. You just think to yourself something like, I'm using this name to refer to whoever these other people are using that name to refer to. He doesn't know what a Feynman diagram is. He doesn't know what the Feynman theory of pair production and annihilation is. This person that we're imagining can use the name Feynman to refer to Feynman, even though he doesn't know any facts or descriptions or properties of this guy. So he doesn't have to know these things, but instead, a chain of communication going back to Feynman himself has been established by virtue of his membership in a community, which has passed the name on from link to link. A rough statement of a theory might be the following. An initial baptism takes place. Here the object may be named by ostension. Ostension is just a fancy word that means pointing. So you point to the object and you say, that's going to be called Richard Feynman, that baby there. Or the reference of the name may be fixed by a description. During that initial baptism ceremony or naming ceremony, it could also work by description. So we could say, the baby who was born yesterday to so-and-so and so-and-so, that baby is going to be called Napoleon Bonaparte, or whatever the baby's name is. When the name is passed from link to link, the receiver of a name must, I think, intend when he learns it to use it with the same reference as the man from whom he learned it. That's one of the constraints on this causal chain. In order for the chain to work and someone to be able to use the name to refer back to that object at the beginning, at each link in the chain, everyone's got to be thinking something like, I'm going to use this name to refer to whoever they use this name to refer to. Okay, so as you can see, Kripke's theory is just stated very quickly. Nonetheless, we get enough of an outline for Gareth Evans a few years later to attack and, I say, defeat this theory. So that's what we're reading next.
Hi, it's me, in my office. If you have a long enough attention span to make it this far in the video, then you might be interested in the book that I'm writing. If you click the link in the description below and put in your email address, I will email you when the book is ready. I promise I will not send you a million emails. I will not sell your email address to spammers. All you will get is an email from me when the book is for sale. And I will pick a bunch of those emails, and those people will get free copies of the book.